Hi there, you're listening to the Paralegals on Fire podcast show where you'll be getting tips and actionable strategies that you can use right now to fast track your paralegal career. I'm your host, Ann Pearson, former paralegal and paralegal manager who left big law in the concrete jungle to start my own company, the Paralegal Boot Camp, where we give online courses that help paralegals make more money, increase their job security, and cut out the learning curve. All right, let's jump right into today's episode. All right, welcome back for another episode. We're going to do a video interview again. Of course, we're also on the audio podcast, but if you prefer video and you're listening to the audio, jump into the podcast episode page and go over to the YouTube video. Because this week I've got Christina West with me. And the reason I'm interviewing Christina this week is because Christina has actually been a guest blogger for the Paralegal Boot Camp's blog for quite a while now, for a few years. She's written several very good blog articles that you guys have read, commented on, you've seen it on social media. And she wrote another one, and I reached out to her and said, hey, instead of just putting it on the blog, why don't you come on and do a video interview? So welcome to the show, Christina.
Hello.
Christine, sorry. So why don't you introduce yourself? And, people usually like to hear, how did you become a paralegal? Tell us a little bit about how you became a paralegal and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I live in a very tiny county in Delaware, in Sussex County. There's not a whole lot of big name law firms around here. It's very small, like boutique style law firms. And I was getting my bachelor's degree, and part of that process was to intern somewhere. So I completed that. And as I was going through finishing my college degree, I ended up being a part of an unfortunate class action lawsuit against a pediatric doctor locally around here. And when I went in to sign my paperwork for the settlement, the attorney asked me, what my plans were after I was done school, as he was opening a law firm in Lewis and was looking for help. And I said I would be interested. So I sent my resume after I graduated and I got the job there.
So you're picking up your check from a class action lawsuit?
Correct.
Okay.
And it was very strange. And I remember my daughter at the time, she was like 2 or 3 years old, and I had brought her with me. And I didn't think I made a good impression at all. I mean, the circumstances were very, they weren't great. The class action was a terrible case. But something good came out of it.
So then what type of law was that you were working in?
So it was personal injury. So I started out, it actually inspired my very first blog about mastering the paper flow in the office, because my first task there was to go into the file room and file all the paperwork away for the paralegal. And that was a whole task in and of itself. And I really realized how much paper paralegals can produce and, their case can produce. And I was able to be exposed to the cases that they were working on. And I probably stayed in that spot probably a month or two. I remember being hired in October, and by December, the paralegal was like, here's a file. Good luck. Oh, and the statute's in March too. So that was really fun. And it ended up being a great case. I learned so much. We did have to file suit in it, but that was okay because I was exposed to that early on. And then I stayed there for 6 years after that.
And now you've moved into a different position. I take it from reading the article. So the article's name and what we're going to talk about today is the 4 B's of a well-rounded paralegal. So you've moved on from personal injury and you're becoming a well-rounded paralegal.
That's right. About my 6th year at that law firm I was immersed in personal injury, auto, dog bite, premises liability, all of it. And our firm did other practice areas too. So I would talk to the paralegals and I would, hear about what they were doing. And I started to think, what if there's something else out there that I want to do or that I'd like or that I'd be better at or, I don't know, just if I could make a better difference or learn something. All I knew was personal injury. I didn't know anything else. So I ended up going to a real estate law firm for about a year. And I learned real estate things, and I quickly realized that I didn't think I wanted to do real estate at that time. So I ended up being let go from that firm after a little over a year. And that inspired my other blog that I sort of wrote about, what happens next after you get fired
I
and what do you do
remember
now.
that one.
Yeah, so that was really tough for me as a paralegal. I had never experienced that before. I didn't know what to expect. I know I felt a lot of feelings, but eventually it did, I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason. So that being let go of that ended me up at my law firm now, where I'm doing this catch-all be-all paralegal. So I'm exposed to all kinds of different things. And so yeah, now I'm here.
Which is, especially when things get tough in an economy where, like if I were to go back to like the 2008, 9, 10 period where the real estate and finance and commercial, like transactional paralegals got hit really hard. A lot of them lost their jobs, and a lot of them just never came back because of it,
Oh,
where litigation paralegals were kind of safe during that
mhm.
period. And then there's just always like certain time periods, like when laws change and maybe bankruptcy paralegals get hit hard or something, where what you're doing is kind of insulating yourself a little bit, where if you're in an area where you're learning a lot of different things, then you're employable in a lot of different areas. So I like that. Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the four different areas because this applies to all different practice areas.
That's
And
right.
you talked about the first one was to be in the know. And
Hmm.
it kind of was where along those lines, if you're in the know, you could maybe branch out. And if you're a corporate paralegal, maybe take a quick class in estate planning. Or you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, yeah. I think the getting fired and ending up at this law firm, well, like I said, was a big blessing. Here, I've been exposed to just so many different areas of law and different paralegals too. So I've learned that not every paralegal has the same experience the as the next paralegal, even if they're doing the same practice law. But to be in the know, the more you know, the more you can be exposed to, and that to me is really important that I've noticed here at this law firm, in particular, because on Christmas Day, we have an attorney texting people asking to come in and file this filing in the Court of Chancery. And I've never filed in the Court of Chancery before. So I'm like, I can't help. And it got me thinking about like, what to be able to be a paralegal that can file in Chancery Court or in JP Court or all of these different courts. Um, every court wants something different, especially in Delaware. We're the smallest state. We have 3 different counties, and each county does something different. So you can really mess things up if you're used to filing in Sussex County and you file in Newcastle County, and it's not the same format. The prothonotary wants things a different way. All of those little nuances that each paralegal knows how the court would like things. Um, I think that that's a really important part of being a well-rounded paralegal.
I agree. I agree. So then the next one was to be a part of something bigger than
Yes.
yourself. What do you mean by that?
I'm like a natural giver. So I'm always looking for a way to help the community or just kind of like be a part of something bigger than myself. And a lot of people, we do that in little ways in our daily lives. So if you pay it forward or, just help out with Toys for Tots is a good one. A lot of people push, but in law firms, I didn't know that you could be exposed to things like that in a law firm until I got to working in a bigger law firm, and part of those, paralegal associations. So our local Delaware Paralegal Association is the best thing I could have ever done. It was join that group and see what they were doing for our community because it's really special. We have the Angel Tree program, so you actually like can pick which family or which kids you want to give them a Christmas for. So I always like that. I always pick the kids. And so essentially you're stepping into the roles of giving them a Christmas. And I think that's important in a paralegal perspective and a law firm perspective, because we are constantly just go, go, go. And those things kind of pull us back, ground us a little. We're still human. Helping is still important. It makes you part of being a well-rounded paralegal. And just being exposed to those things and the other legal professionals who are also helping with those different types of, Angel Tree program is one. They do the veterans down here. That's an important one too. So same thing, the veterans will give the veterans a Christmas. But yeah, reconnecting with our community, because we're serving our community, and to be a part of that community, that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I have to admit, I remember a time, working in big law in particular, when you're defending corporations in big lawsuits. I remember one day kind of halfway through my career thinking, gosh, what am I doing? I don't feel like I'm like nurses go to work and they're saving lives, and maybe they're saving kids' lives and they're saving people's lives, and teachers go to work and they're teaching young children, and they're growing
shaping
their minds.
Yes.
And what are we doing? We're saving corporations money or something,
Right.
And when you then get something like what you're talking about, that's when you realize, like, okay, yeah, but if you are lucky enough to work for a law firm that participates in things like that, then you realize, okay, we can do something to impact the community. Yeah.
It's a great feeling. So yeah.
Okay. So be a part of something bigger. And maybe it could even be something non-legal, right? It could be something outside the law firm too. Your other one was to be self-aware. This one kind of, you were getting a little personal in that one. Tell me.
Yeah. It's, I guess just being at these different law firms with the different paralegals and seeing how each law firm, it was a huge adjustment for me to come into this law firm and realize that not every law firm does things the same, even if it's the same. So I recently took over the personal injury department here, and how I did personal injury at my other firm is not how they do personal injury at this firm. So I've had to learn how to adapt to how they would like to do things and understand why they do things that way. And so for me, I needed to kind of break out of what I have known or what I had learned, and be a little bit more self-aware of the things that I had kind of ingrained in my brain about PI, and kind of adapt to like how they do it here. But more importantly, the self-awareness of your personality at work, and how that impacts your coworkers and how that impacts the actual work getting done, productiveness in your job. It's really important to be self-aware in your professional life. I've worked at law firms where we're doing high volume real estate. There's back-to-back settlements each day. Everybody's just busy outside of their minds, but we're all respectful and nice to each other, and we talk to each other in a respectful way, and we're helping people. If I've got 20 things to do and my paralegal friend down on the second floor has somebody stopping in to sign something that she can't get to, and she asks me to help, I'm not going to stick my nose up at her and say, I can't, I have to. And that's obviously, if you have like a critical deadline, it's okay to say that. But I just realized that some people at law firms aren't self-aware. They get into this very narrow-minded, my work is more important than yours. We make more money, so I don't have to help you. I don't have to, we do a lot of estate planning here, so we're always looking for witnesses. And most of the time everybody's ready to jump and help, but there's always, I've noticed that there's usually always kind of one person who just doesn't want to help. And my understanding is that they've sort of, their work is more important. They're just in this tunnel vision. They don't care about what you have working on. It's, especially if it's a different department, if you have someone in real estate versus somebody who's in personal injury, or, vice versa, it can be a little hard to see past yourself at your work when you're working on your specific thing. So as an example, when I first started working here, I was very happy to be here, and I'm very big on like decorating for holidays and, trying to, the first year I was here, we all carved pumpkins together in the conference room as like a team skill building type of thing. It was so fun. But there, I realized that there were people in our firm that just they didn't want to do that. And eventually it kind of made me feel like I don't really want to do it either if you guys don't want to do it. And it kind of just dwindled out. And now I look back out and I'm like, we had a great time carving pumpkins. And like, it sucks that one person kind of, made it that way when it doesn't have to be that way. So you really have to make a conscious effort to come into work and be able to, I'm sure everybody's heard this before, but drop your stuff at the door and come in and, be a part of a team. And some people just can't do that. So it makes it a little bit harder to work in a team environment.
Exactly. Boy, we could have a whole separate episode about that.
I know. And I went back and studied, looked at some of these prior videos and I didn't see really any one that kind of talked about this. And I know it's, you don't want to upset people at your work and you don't want to, be on bad terms with anybody, but I don't see it as being on bad terms at all. Self-awareness is very important inside and outside of the office. And if you can have it inside the office, it makes you a better paralegal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Better employee, better team.
Yeah, I go to a different office. We have 3 different offices in each county. And when I go to the other office, it's a totally different culture and a totally different vibe. And I'm like, man, I wish it was kind of like this where we were at. But, I guess you can't make everybody be self-aware. But if you can be self-aware as a paralegal, I think that makes you a lot more approachable at work and it makes you more of an asset to the team.
I like that. Maybe we will have another episode. I'd love to get like a
like down to the nitty-grittiness of it. Yeah.
Career counselor or even a psychologist on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So your last one, be courageous. And it sounded like, if I remember correctly, it was be courageous. That was kind of like to make a move, maybe. Was that correct?
And granted, the very first time I was courageous and I made a move, but the second time I was let go. But it was still, I had to be courageous in that moment. And I had to not let it get me down and kind of keep charging forward. The position that I took at the law firm I'm at now was for a front desk receptionist. And I took it and I was scared, but I needed to kind of think outside the box and not be afraid to take that, because eventually it did land me into my paralegal role that I'm in now. And where I'm at now, there are paralegals who just practice real estate. There are paralegals who just do estate planning, and they stay in there and they know everything about it from front to back, back to front. They know where to file, and that's great because they're, an asset, obviously. But I think it's more important to sort of if you're wanting to be a well-rounded paralegal, you do need to have a better understanding of what other people are doing at your law firm. And the only way to do that is to kind of branch out and try something else.
I agree. I would add to that, because when I first saw the title of that particular section, I thought it was going to be along the lines of like courageous, like have a courageous conversation. Sometimes you have to be courageous, maybe with the coworker, right? That is not being the team member. Sometimes it's have the courageous conversation about or with your boss who's not treating you. I mean, you could have a lot of things about being courageous when you're working at a law firm.
Yeah. And I just really, when I was thinking about what it means to be a well-rounded paralegal, I was there at one point. All I did was personal injury. I didn't know anything else. And I didn't think at that point I was a well-rounded paralegal because I couldn't draft a deed and I didn't know anything about corporate law, and I didn't have a respect for any of that because I just didn't know what it was about. And then when I got here and I just realized like I'm doing liquor license mailings and I'm doing deeds and a little bit of everything. And now, even if I'm just in my practice area now of personal injury, I know that this firm knows that I've got their back. If a real estate paralegal is sick and a deed needs to be drafted on the fly, they know that I'm here and that I can do that deed on the fly. because I have that experience and a vast, broader experience than just doing personal injury. If I had only done personal injury, the firm wouldn't have come to me in a moment like that, like, hey, can you draft this deed? Because they know that I'm not going to be able to draft that deed because all I know is personal injury. So I see paralegals who are kind of stuck at the same law firm in the same practice area, and eventually it's like a statue almost, and you're not learning anything else. And part of being a paralegal is to continue to learn and to continue to grow. And one of the ways to do that is scary. It's very scary to to be let go, or to, decide to put your 2 weeks in and let them know. Because of course, I get why are you going? What happened? The exit interviews, all of that. It's very nerve-wracking. But when I look back at it now, I'm in a much better position now than I was 7-8 years ago.
Be courageous.
Yes.
That's what we're going to end on.
You can be courageous with your conversations. You can apply that. But in this particular one, if it's time to go, just be courageous and go.
Be courageous. Yeah, to make a move. Yeah, I have to say, looking back when I went into the management role, that took some courage. I was only 12 years into being a paralegal. Wow. And I went into it thinking, I don't know, I've never been a manager before. I mean, I was managing a couple of case assistants at my old firm, but yeah, I totally agree. All right, so that was, let's round it out. Be in the know.
Be in the know.
Be a part of something bigger than yourself. Be self-aware, and be courageous.
Be courageous.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, and I appreciate you.
That's it. That's a wrap for this week. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now. All right, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, hit the subscribe button in whatever platform you're listening. And please take a quick minute and leave a review of the podcast, and share this episode with just one colleague or friend who you think would benefit from what we discussed today. Share the knowledge, and the entire paralegal profession elevates. See you next week. Bye for now.